Hi again. Walter Rauschenbusch, page 39 of Christianity and the Social Crisis. Still talking about the prophets and why they were opposed, why they were often killed. It is well to note, however, that the prophets took no vindictive pleasure in prophesying evil, as some modern prophets enjoy beating the broom of God's vengeance about the ears of the people. While Jeremiah was foretelling the destruction of Jerusalem, his heart was breaking. It is significant that as soon as the disaster had come, the tone of prophecy changed. I think this is supposed to be as long, but it says at long, so we'll change it. As long as the people were falsely optimistic, the prophets persisted in destroying their illusions. When the people were despairing, the prophets opposed their false hopelessness. On the ruins of the temple, Jeremiah foretold its restoration, the return of the people, and a new era for his desolated country. As soon as the news of the destruction of the temple reached Ezekiel in exile, his threats changed to comfort and promises. This was not instability, it was loyalty to facts and hostility to illusions. Because they believed in the immutability of the moral law, they had to tremble at any departure from it. But they could also feel its unshaken strength under their feet when all things went to pieces about them. These pessimists were really profoundly and magnificently optimistic. They never doubted the ultimate victory of Jehovah, of his righteousness, and of his people. The time may come in our own country when the smiling optimists will be the most frightened and helpless of all, and when the present pessimists will be the only ones who have any hopes to cheer and any clear convictions to guide. The great prophets whom we revere were not those whom their own age regarded most. They were the men of the opposition and of the radical minority. They probably had more influence over posterity than over their own generation. Their attacks on existing conditions brought dangerous attacks upon them in return. A later day can always study with complacency the attacks made on the vested interests in a previous epoch, and the championship of eternal principles always seems divine to a generation that is not hurt by them. Jesus summed up the impressions left on him by Old Testament history by saying that prophets have no honor in their own country and in their own generation. It is always posterity which builds their sepulchres and garnishes their tombs. The Hebrew prophets shared the fate of all leaders who are far ahead of their times. They did not themselves achieve the triumph of their ideas. It was achieved for them by men who did not share their spirit and who insensibly debased their ideals in realizing them. The ethical monotheism of the prophets did not become common property in Judah till the priests and scribes enforced it. That is part of the divine comedy of history. The Tories carry out the liberal programs. The ideas preached by socialists and single taxers are adopted by populists, radical Democrats, and conservative Republicans successively. And in coming years, the great parties will take credit for championing ideas which they did their best to stifle and then to betray. It is a beneficent scheme by which the joy of life is evened up. The practical men and conservatives have the pleasure of feeling that they are the only ones who can really make reforms work. The prophetic minds have their satisfaction, or have the satisfaction of knowing that the world must come their way, whether it will or not, because they are on the way to justice, and justice is on the way to God. A link to a discussion that Abraham Heschel, the great rabbi, on the significance of the prophets. We did several videos on that some months back. Heschel was one among the co-workers of Martin Luther King back in the 1960s. Had a lot of influence upon many thinkers back then because he took the prophets seriously. So a link to Heschel's work on your screen. And next time, Rauschenbusch summarizes the historical roots of Christianity in the Old Testament.